Chapter 6, A Night at Toko-Ji Temple. Each year that passes is usually remembered by some particular incident that happened during it. A mighty ruler would probably recall the years by the battles he has won. For the poor, the year's weather was usually what it was best remembered by. That is not surprising, for when there is a drought, it is the poor who starve, and if the river bursts its bank, it is their houses that is swept away. Death, too, can often give its name to a year. It was the year my mother died, or that winter when we lost our youngest son. But life is not all tragedy. There are happy events, too, years when the harvest is abundant and the river stays within its banks. Shortly after my fight with Jiro, he was removed to the small castle at Akiyama. If my 12th year could be best recalled by that battle and remembered with a grin, the event that marked my 14th would make no one smile. It was fall when it happened, just as the last of the trees were losing their leaves. By the time I had moved a bit up on the mat and reached a position among the others that was securely based upon my ability with the horses. We had also been given better-looking clothing, for Lord Akiyama did not wish his servants to look like beggars. I was well satisfied with myself, knowing that I cut a fine figure when I strode through town, run some errand for my master. It was late in the day, just as when the shadows grow large before they disappear into the night, that I heard someone shout, "Taro!" I was standing by the corner of the stable, and in the dusk I did not recognize who called me, but I answered willingly enough. As I walked closer, I realized it was Lord Akiyama himself. I was surprised, for it was most unusual for him to come to the stables. "Saddle 2 horses. I want you to accompany someone to Toko-Ji. You are to wait for him there." I was about to fulfill his command and already taken a few steps in the direction of the stables when he called me back. "One ought to have a few servants who have had their tongues cut out," Lord Akiyama grinned. "Since I have none that are mute, I hope to at least have a few who are clever enough not to speak of everything they see or hear." I bowed deeply, in this way conveying the message that I wished to be among his most trusted servants. Lord Akiyama nodded as if to equally say silently, "We shall see if that is true." Then he told me to bring the horses to the gate and to wait there. Lord Akiyama ordered me to saddle 2 horses. Though I preferred to ride bareback, I was pleased, for I was aware that it was an honor. The years had not lessened my desire to be numbered among the samurai, and to me the saddle symbolized the rank and gave me renewed hope of attaining it. I selected 2 horses that were fine animals but not showy. Somehow I felt there was something secret and dark about the whole affair that did not call for horses that were too easily recognizable. I had waited only a short while when Lord Akiyama came with a young samurai dressed very plainly. I recognized him immediately. He was Takeda Katsuyori, the son of Lord Shingen. I had seen him often enough, always splendidly dressed and usually riding one of his father's best horses. I guessed by the plainness of his dress and the fact that he had come to Lord Akiyama to borrow one of his horses that he did not wish to be recognized. Silently I held the horse as he swung himself into the saddle. Then I mounted my own horse. Lord Katsuyori leaned forward for a moment and said something to Lord Akiyama in so low a voice that I could not hear. Then he spurred his horse and I followed him into the dusk. Many strange things had taken place at Toko-Ji. The temple is large, yet few go to worship there. It was in this temple that Suwa Yorishige had been prisoner, and where he had killed himself or had been murdered. Suwa Yorishige was Lord Katsuyori's grandfather. Lord Takeda had not only defeated Lord Suwa and taken his lands from him, but had made his daughter his mistress. Katsuyori was her son. As we rode through the night, I pondered on all this and could not help but wondering what the young man riding in front of me was thinking. Was he recalling his grandfather's death or his mother's disgrace? For should she not have rather killed herself than share Lord Takeda Shingen's bed? Lord Suwa was long dead. Lady Suwa was. She had died when her son Katsuyori was 9 years old. Was he loyal to her memory or to his mighty father? The ride to Toko-Ji Temple would not have taken long in daylight, especially since we were riding fine horses. But the night soon grew so dark that we could not even let the horses trot. Once something in the gloom frightened Lord Katsuyori's horse, and for a moment I thought he might be thrown, but he managed to bring the animal under control. When we came to the gate of the temple, Lord Katsuyori dismounted, and without a word, handed me the reins of the horse. I guessed I was not to enter the temple grounds, but had to wait for him hidden in the dark night outside. Not one word had he spoken to me during the ride. Did he not believe, or did he believe that I did not know who he was, or had he thought me not worthy of wasting his breath on? I sat down on a large stone near the temple gate. The night was cool, winter was not far away. In the distance a dog howled dismally as if it were in pain. I shivered, not so much from cold as from fear. I wished Lord Katsuyori would come back so we could leave this dismal place. The young lord did not return, and the hours climbed by slowly as if they were years. At last a tiny sickle moon rose over the mountains near the temple, setting off their black shadow against the star-filled night. Still, Lord Katsuyori did not come. I waited patiently, and as I sat and listened to the quiet breathing of the horses, I was thankful for their company, for I feared that the place was filled with the ghosts of all the unhappy people who had died there. Suddenly I felt that something terrible was about to take place inside the temple walls, a premonition not so much of something evil, but rather something terribly sad happening in the darkness beyond. One of the horses whinnied softly and shook itself, as if it too had sensed that all was not well in the still night. I put my hand up and stroked its neck to calm it. I thought it was important that I should not be noticed. The tiny moon had set, and I guessed it would soon be the hour of the tiger when suddenly a young monk appeared. He did not greet me, but merely stared while he stood so close I could have touched him if I held out my hand. I stared back. He had a mole near his nose, I thought, and that would be how I remember you. And suddenly as he come, he disappeared after making a strange, unpleasant grimace. Had he been sent by someone to spy, I wondered. Around my shoulders I wore a saddlecloth I had taken to the stable to keep me warm, and that had hidden my clothing, which had the crest of Lord Akiyama on it and was of his color. Soon Lord Katsuyori came. As he took the reins I held out to him, his face was close to mine. It was white as I imagined a ghost would be, and equally lifeless. He tarried a moment before mounting his horse, and I wondered if he was going to speak to me. Then he rode away at a sharp trot into the darkness, and I followed, holding the reins tight for fear that my horse would stumble. As we returned to Kofuchu, the stars were growing faint. Soon the night would be over. Near Tsuchikasaki Castle, Lord Katsuyori dismounted and handed me his reins as silently as he had done at Toko-Ji Temple. He made a slight movement with his right hand, which I took as a sign of my dismissal. I was tired and cold as I returned to the stables. I lingered there for a moment because it was warm and the smell of the beast was pleasant. Something had happened at Toko-Ji, something important. I did not quite know what it was, or maybe that's not true, maybe I knew. As I lay down in my place in our room and wrapped my blanket around me, again I saw Lord Katsuyori's face in front of me with its ashen pallor. If you are sleeping 6 in one room, then you awaken when the others get up, regardless of the fact that you went to bed just before sunrise. Even though I turned toward the wall and hid my face, I soon had to give up trying to get any more rest. I had already made up my mind what story to tell if any of my friends should ask what errand I had been on. It would not do to act the mute, for that would make everyone all the more curious. Still, I am not sure the others were satisfied that my tale was true. But I was spared further questioning when the youngster who had been sent to the kitchen returned not only with our breakfast, but with such important news that my whereabouts might be forgotten. Yoshinobu-sama has killed himself. The youngster's eyes were shining with excitement. It's true, he killed himself at Toko-Ji Temple. He committed seppuku this morning. The cook heard it from a samurai. The youngster was enjoying being the center of attention. Such news that Lord Shingen's son had committed harakiri was so unusual a breakfast conversation that the porridge was allowed to grow cold. Everyone had something to say, some comment to make, and everyone felt sorry for Yoshinobu. It was hard punishment for his revolt. After all, his father had done the same when he was young. Lord Takeda Shingen had only been 21 years old when he led an insurrection against his father, Takeda Nobutora, and sent him into exile in Tsuruga. The old man was still alive, and they say he dreamed of vengeance against his son. I listened to the babble around me, but said nothing. The keeper of Lord Akiyama's stable, a man older than the rest of us, asked, "Does anyone know who his Kaishaku Nin was?" Everyone looked around at each other, and no one answered, for no one knew. The porridge was bolted quickly, for all were eager to get up and about. Servants are ever ready to gossip about their master's household. The news of the day was like some precious gift bestowed among them, and they were eager to discuss it with others, longing for new ears to pour their opinions into. Soon I was left alone to contemplate what had happened during the night and the unanswered question. Who had been the Kaishaku Nin for when Yoshinobu had committed seppuku? The Kaishaku Nin's part in the ceremony is not one to be envied. When a man who was committing harakiri has entered his dirk into his belly and drawn it across, cutting his stomach open, It is the Kaishakunin's work to finish his life as quickly as possible, to cut short the pain by severing the head from the body. For a moment I had thought that Katsuyori had been his brother's Kaishakunin, but the longer I thought of it, the more I realized it could not have been. For the Kaishakunin is always a friend of the man who commits seppuku, not his rival. Besides, he is usually older, and Katsuyori was much younger than his half-brother Yoshinobu. Suddenly it occurred to me there might not have been any need for a Kaishakunin, that something worse and more disgraceful had taken place in Toko-Ji than I had imagined. Had Yoshinobu been executed by his father's command, and had it been Katsuyori's duty to take that warrant of death to the temple?